Bali is often described as paradise, a tropical island of beaches, temples, endless rice terraces, and sunsets that seem almost too perfect to be real. For millions of travelers each year, it is a dream destination, a place people visit to relax, to heal, to surf, to party, or to escape the pressures of ordinary life. To many outsiders, Bali appears to be little more than a beautiful island with luxury resorts and spiritual branding. But that image barely scratches the surface, because Bali is not simply a tropical destination. It is one of the most culturally unique islands on Earth, a place where ancient spiritual traditions still govern everyday life, where people leave offerings to unseen spirits before opening their shops, where volcanic mountains are worshipped as divine beings, where demons are not treated as symbols or metaphors, but as forces believed to actively shape reality, where an entire island enters complete silence once every year to hide from evil spirits in the darkness, and where beneath the polished image of paradise lies a far deeper story of religion, survival, conquest, transformation, and contradiction. To understand Bali, you have to look beyond the beach clubs, beyond the villas, beyond the social media image that has been exported to the world. Because the real Bali is older, stranger, and far more fascinating than most people ever realize. Long before Bali became famous around the world, it was already known by another name, the Island of the Gods. To many visitors, that sounds like a poetic marketing slogan, a romantic phrase invented for tourism brochures. But for the Balinese, the name reflects something much deeper. Religion here is not confined to temples or special occasions. It is woven into nearly every moment of daily life. In many parts of the world, religion exists alongside ordinary life. In Bali, religion and ordinary life are almost impossible to separate. Families wake up and prepare offerings before breakfast. Business owners place flowers, rice, incense, and small gifts outside their shops to honor the spirits. Ceremonies frequently close roads and interrupt traffic. Temple festivals can transform entire villages overnight. The spiritual world is not seen as distant. It is believed to exist constantly alongside the physical one. And maintaining harmony between those two worlds is one of the central purposes of Balinese life. What makes this even more remarkable is that Bali's religion is unlike the Hinduism practiced almost anywhere else. While Balinese Hinduism shares roots with Indian Hindu traditions, it evolved into something uniquely its own. It blends Hindu philosophy with local animist beliefs, ancestor worship, spirit rituals, and indigenous traditions that existed long before Indian influence reached the island. The result is a spiritual system found nowhere else on Earth. One where mountains, rivers, trees, and even entire landscapes can be spiritually charged. One where ancestors are believed to remain active in the lives of their descendants. And one where balance between good and evil is not viewed as a symbolic concept, but as a practical necessity. Because in Balinese belief, the universe is held together by opposing forces. Light and darkness, order and chaos, creation and destruction, gods and demons. Neither side can be erased. Neither side can fully win. The goal is not to destroy darkness. It is to maintain balance with it. That philosophy shapes everything. It shapes architecture. It shapes ceremonies. It shapes the orientation of villages and temples. Even the layout of homes often follows spiritual rules based on the direction of sacred mountains and the sea. In Bali, geography itself is spiritual. Mountains are associated with purity and the divine. The sea is often associated with chaos, danger, and powerful spiritual forces. This invisible spiritual map affects how people build, live, and move through the world. Perhaps nowhere is Bali's spiritual worldview more visible than during Nyepi, the Balinese Day of Silence. To outsiders, the concept sounds almost unbelievable. For 24 hours, an island of more than 4 million people essentially shuts itself down. The airport closes, flights stop, roads empty, businesses shut their doors, internet usage drops. Lights are dimmed or turned off. Tourists are forbidden from leaving their hotels. Locals remain inside their homes. Even noise is kept to an absolute minimum. Few places on Earth could coordinate such a complete societal pause, but Bali does it every single year. And the reason is not practical, it is spiritual. According to tradition, evil spirits roam the island during this time. The island becomes silent and dark, so that the spirits will believe Bali has been abandoned. If the island appears empty, the spirits will pass over it. It is an extraordinary idea. An entire modern society willingly entering darkness and silence to deceive supernatural forces. And yet what makes it more extraordinary is that this tradition survives not in a remote village, but across an internationally famous tourist destination visited by millions. The night before Nyepi is even more dramatic. Massive demonic statues known as Ogo Ogo are carried through the streets. These towering monsters represent evil spirits, negative energy, and destructive forces. They are grotesque, exaggerated, terrifying, and often beautifully crafted. Crowds gather as they are paraded through villages with music, fire, and celebration. Then many are burned in purification ceremonies. It is part festival, part ritual, part spiritual cleansing. A spectacle unlike almost anything else in the modern world. And yet Bali is not merely a place of ritual. Its very existence as a fertile and prosperous island was shaped by violence. Not human violence, geological violence. Because Bali was born from fire. The island sits directly on the Pacific Ring of Fire, one of the most volcanically active regions on Earth. Its mountains were formed through immense tectonic pressure and repeated volcanic eruptions over countless millennia. Those eruptions were destructive, but they also made Bali possible. The ash and lava that once devastated the land created the rich volcanic soil that turned Bali into one of the most fertile islands in Southeast Asia. Its famous rice terraces exist because volcanoes fed the land. Its agricultural success was built on geological destruction. Without volcanic activity, Bali may never have become capable of supporting such a dense and complex civilization. Towering above the island is Mount Agung, the most sacred mountain in Bali. For the Balinese, Mount Agung is not simply a mountain, it is the spiritual center of the island, the home of the gods, a cosmic axis connecting the earthly and divine realms. Its presence dominates not only the landscape, but the spiritual imagination of the island. Many temples and villages are oriented in relation to Mount Agung. Its direction determines sacred alignment. Its silhouette shapes daily life. And when it erupts, many locals do not see only a natural disaster. They see a spiritual event, a divine message, a sign that cosmic balance has been disturbed. This may seem symbolic to outsiders, but for many on the island, such beliefs are entirely real. And Mount Agung has reminded Bali of its power many times. Its eruptions have killed thousands, destroyed villages, blanketed the island in ash, and altered the course of Balinese history. Yet despite its danger, or perhaps because of it, the mountain remains deeply revered. Because in Bali, destructive power and divine power are often inseparable. Long before international tourism transformed Bali into a global destination, the island was ruled by kingdoms. Small but sophisticated courts controlled different regions of the island. They built palaces, temples, irrigation systems, and cultural institutions that shaped Balinese identity for centuries. Bali's historical importance grew even greater during one of Southeast Asia's most dramatic religious transformations. As Islam spread across much of the Indonesian archipelago between the 13th and 16th centuries, many Hindu and Buddhist kingdoms declined. Java, once the center of powerful Hindu empires, gradually converted, but Bali remained Hindu, partly because of its geography, partly because of resistance, and partly because fleeing nobles, priests, artists, and intellectuals from Java migrated to Bali carrying with them texts, traditions, architecture, and sacred knowledge. In many ways, Bali became a cultural refuge, a final sanctuary for traditions disappearing elsewhere. Practices that vanished from much of the region survived on this island. Bali preserved forms of art, dance, ritual, architecture, and literature that might otherwise have been lost to history. This transformed the island into something rare, not merely a kingdom, but a living archive of older Indonesian civilization. Even today, many aspects of Bali's culture reflect this preservation. Its temple gates, its dances, its shadow puppetry, its architecture, its ceremonies. Much of it descends from traditions centuries older than the modern Indonesian state itself. Then came Europe. In the 19th century, Dutch colonial forces sought full control over Bali. What followed became one of the most extraordinary episodes in colonial history. Balinese rulers resisted Dutch domination fiercely, but in some regions, when defeat became inevitable, Balinese royalty and nobles chose a path almost unimaginable to outsiders. Rather than surrender, they staged ritual mass suicides known as puputan. Entire royal courts dressed in white funeral garments. Women, men, nobles, priests, and warriors. They marched directly toward Dutch troops, knowing they would die. Some killed themselves, others were shot. All chose death over submission. To the Dutch, it was shocking. To the Balinese, it was an act of honor, an ultimate refusal to live under foreign rule. The puputan remains one of the most haunting and dramatic acts of anti-colonial resistance in Southeast Asian history. Even after colonial rule, Bali would continue changing. But perhaps its most radical transformation came not through conquest. It came through fascination. In the early 20th century, Western artists, writers, photographers, and anthropologists began arriving in Bali. They were captivated by what they saw, an island of elaborate rituals, exotic temples, traditional dance, minimal Western influence, and a way of life unlike anything they had experienced. They wrote books, painted scenes, took photographs, published stories, and slowly, Bali entered the global imagination. It became mythologized, not merely as an island, but as paradise, a place of beauty, spirituality, sensuality, and escape. Hollywood and travel media amplified this image. And over time, that romanticized vision transformed Bali forever. Tourism exploded, roads expanded, hotels multiplied, foreign investment poured in. Entire coastal regions transformed into tourism economies. What had once been quiet fishing villages became international hotspots. Rice fields turned into resorts. Local homes became guest houses. Traditional landscapes changed rapidly. And with tourism came prosperity. Many Balinese benefited enormously. Jobs increased, businesses grew, infrastructure improved, but the transformation also created tension. Because paradise, once discovered by the world, becomes difficult to preserve. Today, Bali lives in contradiction. It is wealth and poverty, spirituality and commercialization, tradition and globalization. Ancient temples stand beside luxury beach clubs, blasting electronic music. Offerings to the gods sit on sidewalks next to motorbikes and traffic jams. Sacred ceremonies unfold while influencers film content nearby. The island that once moved to the rhythm of ritual now also moves to the rhythm of tourism. This tension is visible everywhere. Water shortages affect some local communities, while luxury villas maintain pools and tropical gardens. Plastic waste appears on beaches once considered untouched. Traffic overwhelms roads never designed for millions of visitors. And many Balinese quietly wonder how much change the island can absorb before something essential is lost. Yet despite all of this, Bali still feels different. That is what so many visitors notice first. Even those who have traveled extensively often say Bali has an atmosphere unlike anywhere else. Something difficult to define. Part of that feeling comes from the visual beauty. The temples, the mountains, the jungle, the rice terraces, the ocean. But beauty alone does not explain it. What many people feel is the presence of a living culture that has not been fully erased by modernity. In many destinations, tradition survives mostly as performance for tourists. In Bali, much of it remains genuinely lived. Ceremonies are not staged for visitors. They happen because they must happen. Offerings are not decorations. They are daily obligations. Temples are not monuments. They are active, sacred spaces. For the Balinese, spirituality is not an accessory to life. It is the framework of life itself. And perhaps that is why Bali continues to fascinate the world. Because it represents something increasingly rare. A place where ancient worldview still meaningfully shapes modern society. A place where myth remains alive. A place where the invisible world still matters. A place where progress has arrived, but has not entirely erased what came before. Bali is not perfect. It is not untouched. It is not the flawless paradise portrayed online. It is crowded, complicated, commercialized, sometimes chaotic, sometimes overbuilt, sometimes struggling under the weight of its own popularity. But perhaps that makes it even more fascinating. Because Bali is not remarkable because it is paradise. It is remarkable because it is far more complex than paradise. It is an island where ancient gods coexist with modern tourism, where sacred volcanoes overlook traffic jams, where centuries-old rituals continue beneath the glow of luxury resorts, where spiritual belief still influences daily decisions in a world increasingly dominated by secular modernity. Bali is not just beautiful, it is layered, contradictory, ancient and modern at once. And that complexity is what makes it one of the most fascinating places on Earth. To most people, Bali is a vacation. To others, it is a spiritual retreat. To influencers, it is content. To investors, it is opportunity. But to truly understand Bali, you must look deeper. Beyond the beaches, beyond the sunsets, beyond the paradise sold to the world. Because beneath that surface lies an island shaped by volcanoes, preserved by faith, scarred by conquest, transformed by globalization, and still guided by traditions older than many nations. Bali is not simply a destination. It is a civilization compressed into an island. A place where history, religion, nature, and modernity collide every single day. And perhaps that is the real reason Bali captivates so many people. Not because it is paradise, but because beneath its beauty lies mystery. And beneath its mystery lies a story far older than tourism ever was. If you want, I can make it even longer and more hidden lands / sleep-friendly documentary style by slowing the pacing, adding more atmospheric transitions, deeper historical detail, and richer cinematic narration so it reaches a true 30-plus minute documentary runtime.